Good afternoon. Today is August 1st, 2022. My name is Blair Williams, and I'm here at the Cumberland County Historical Society with Jack Griffith. So thank you for coming in today, Jack.
Thank you.
So the first question I have here is, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, but my mother was from Baltimore. We lived in York at the time, and she didn't want to have her firstborn in the little town of York. So that's why I was born in Baltimore, but, November 8th, 1942.
And is that where you grew up to? Was York?
We lived there until about 1951, and then we moved to North Middleton. Yeah, we had a cabin out there in North Middleton from the time I was born. My grandfather bought 36 acres out there, a farm on Longs Gap Road. It became Cactus Hill, but because it has native Pennsylvania cactus.
Sure.
Anyway, that's where I grew up from 51 to 60 when I joined the Air Force.
Okay. So did you attend Carlisle schools then, or?
Yeah, I attended St. Patrick's School in York till 51, and then St. Patrick's School in Carlisle until probably 56. And then I went to Carlisle Junior High School, I guess, and then high school.
So this was the St. Patrick's School when it was on East Pomfret Street.
Correct.
And do you have any memories of going to that school?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we had a playground, and then they built what became a daycare center there. And yeah, I remember I remember being in a fight one day, and a guy that was a little bit bigger than I was came running down the sidewalk by the cemetery there, and I just luckily just ducked at the right minute, and he went over me and flopped on his back, and that was the end of the fight.
Were there any particular teachers or sisters that stand out in your memory?
Oh, yes. I remember one real tall one. She was very nice. I can't remember her name, but then Sister Teresa Francis was principal when I was in, I guess, 6th or 7th grade, and then Sister Andre was the last one I remember. She couldn't figure out who did something wrong one day, and she lined about 25 of us up and sat a chair out in the playground and got us all to bend over her knees without touching our knees, swatted each one of us with a stick or something.
A little bit different.
Just once.
Now, I was talking with Claire Brem a little while ago. She remembers on East Pomfret at the school, and all these big community gatherings that the church would put on for the community. Do you remember any of those or what those were like?
Yeah, I remember working at some of those. Yeah, it was busy times.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I've got dementia, so I'm gonna be not much help with some of these details. Yeah, I don't
No,
can't,
that's all
can't
right.
come up with anything.
Sounds like you're remembering the good ones.
Were you ever an altar server?
Yeah, I was an altar boy from
And do you have any recollections about your experience as an altar server?
Yeah, well, uh, I remember all the priests there, Monsignor Schmidt and Father Fontanella, and I guess I don't know whether I was a Eucharistic minister with Father Fontanella, but I don't know when I was an altar boy.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
uh, any particular instances there?
Well, sort of on a related note, you mentioned that you went to St. Pat's in York.
Yes.
What were your sort of earliest memories of going to St. Pat's of York?
We only lived a couple blocks from, we lived on King Street, and St. Pat's in York is on Beaver Street. And I remember walking back and forth. And then I remember my sister's 2 years younger, and she started, and some kid was stopping her every day and bugging her, and I had to confront him. Uh, I don't, my father did all kinds of work there. He had a sign that said, at Christmas time, it said, it was in Latin, I guess. Come on. I don't know, he hung it up above the doors on the outside of the church. It was like 25 feet long and 2 feet high, and said, Gloria in excelsis Deo, something like that. And I helped him put that up a few times, but he was involved with everything.
Well, something I should have asked earlier. What were your parents' names?
My grandfather, my father, and I all are John Holmes Griffith. So I'm the third. He was a junior, and my grandfather was a senior, I guess. My mother was Camilla McHugh, and she was in the Irish part of Baltimore. uh,
Now, so what role did the church play in your family life growing up?
well, my wife now is amazed that we used to, we had 7 kids in the family, and we'd all circle around my parents' bed at night and say the rosary. So that was, she still's amazed at that. It was like every night we said the rosary. Uh,
Well, did it shift at all from, you said when you lived in York, you lived sort of right next to St. Pat's in York, but then when you moved to
Couple
Cumberland
blocks.
County, what?
a couple blocks away.
Yeah, but still, I'm assuming it was a lot closer than
It was walking distance.
St. Pat's was when you moved.
Oh
to
my, yes.
So did that at all alter how your family connected with the Catholic Church, or did that not matter much?
No, it did. My mother used to, there were no school buses at that time, and she'd drive us. We had a 39 Chevy panel truck and a 39 Pontiac and a 46 Chevy. And my dad took the 46 Chevy to work every day, and my mom drove us in the 39 Pontiac to St. Pat's. And uh, uh, I can't,
Yeah, well, no, yeah, that would have been a shift. So, obviously, when you moved to Carlisle, there was only a single church. Or
yes,
not, excuse me, when you moved to North Middleton, there was only one St. Pat's, and that was the
yes.
one on East Pomfret Street. So I'm wondering, do you remember what the first time you went to the Shrine Church, what that experience was like? Or
Well, the first time I went to it, I was an infant just about,
okay,
because we had this cabin out in North Middleton, and summer times we'd be up here pretty regularly. When my grandfather died, just before, or a year before I was born, um, we, oh, come on. We kept the property out there when my grandfather died. We sold off creek frontage at $100 or $200 a lot for to pay off my grandfather's debts. But he had 36 acres, and then there were 25 acres left after we sold off that. And we kept the very last cabin back in the Cactus Hill. And what was your question?
so my question was bad because you were an infant when you first came to the Shrine Church. So, but I was just wondering, well, maybe the better question would have been, what was your first memory of the Shrine Church?
Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
My one memory was a little later, I guess, when the place became so populated that we had benches inside the altar rail. We had benches on the side altars, or there's chairs on the side altar. It was packed. There were people up in the choir loft and everything. Those were memories. Now, Seeley Shump was the choir or organist. I remember that it was pretty packed.
Was that different or familiar to you from your experience in York?
Oh my, the church in York was much bigger.
Was it?
And yeah, there was St. Patrick's was here, and 2 blocks away was St. Mary's, and there were 4 churches in York at the time.
Oh, wow.
And so it was quite a bit different. But
Well, you've already you mentioned earlier, I believe Monsignor Schmidt and Father Fontanella. I'm wondering, were there any other pastors that
Yes.
stand out in your mind?
yes, I remember quite a few. Father McGinley married my first wife and me. We were married for 51 years. She died of a brain hemorrhage.
Her name was
Joy
Joy.
Wilson. But I remember from Monsignor Schmidt, Father Mattern, Father McGinley, Father Browitz, Father Fontanella, Father Walterscheid, and then more recently, Father Forey, Father Moran, and Father Bender. But quite a few.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned also that you were and I might get the term wrong, but I believe it was a Eucharist minister.
Yes.
Do you have any memories of when you were that stand out to you of being that? All right.
Yes. The first group of Eucharistic ministers, uh, Bill Bailey was one of those, and a few others that I knew. But I was in the second group, which is, I don't know, 6 months or so after the first group. But my current wife is now a Eucharistic minister, or it's not, I'm sorry, it's not a Eucharistic minister. It's a minister of Holy Communion. If you say it's Eucharistic minister, that's the priest. So,
Okay.
but we used to be called that.
Were there any other committees or ministries or helping with CCD that you were involved with?
I was involved with Boy Scouts for a long time. I was a Cub Master for 10 years. Steve Herman was both the Scout Master and the Cub Master, and so I took over as Cub Master to relieve some of his pain.
Now, were you a scout yourself, or were your kids involved?
Yes, both.
Both.
Yeah, I was a scout. We used to meet underneath the old church. There's a stairway that went down to the basement under the old church. And there was a long, narrow room over there that was not finished really.
Yeah.
There's an exposed stone and everything else. It was pretty rough.
Well, what was that experience like being a scout at St. Pat's?
Oh, I remember camping at Allenbury and Hidden Valley and some other places. I remember getting stung up at Cowan's Gap, but it was,
Well, I know I interviewed him. It must have been 5 years ago, but I know Lincoln Morrell, I believe, was the first Eagle Scout. at
Yes.
St. Pat's. Did you go that far, or?
no, I never learned Morse code, so I never even got first class.
Okay. What? So you didn't need to learn Morse code for the military either, or?
No, I was a radar technician in the Air Force, and I went to school in Denver and learned to repair radar systems
Okay.
on F-104s. Yeah,
It's probably a little bit more complicated than Morse code, too.
just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife and I just got back from Ohio where we went to the Air Force Museum. They have like 6 huge hangars. I
Yeah.
mean, they've got C-141 and B-52s, big things in there that just phenomenal. I was biggest hangars I've ever been in my life.
Well, you've obviously been involved with St. Pat's for a long time. So one of the questions that we've been asking a lot is, what were your feelings about the church moving from St. Pat's, the Shrine Church, to the new location on Marsh Drive?
Well, it was a relief to get out of the Shrine Church with all the crowding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was jam-packed in there. So, yeah, the Marsh Drive was much better. Now we're living out there.
Okay. Well, are there any other changes? I'm sure there are many, but that stand out to you since you became involved?
Uh, I guess women involved with the services and things like that. That's been years now. So it's
No, it's been years since the church moved to Marsh Drive as well. So we're covering 70 years of history there.
uh, I remember Monsignor Schmidt. My eighth grade class only had 8 students, and Monsignor Schmidt took us on a trip to Baltimore, and I think to Washington too. But I just vaguely remember that. But he was very nice.
Well, that's something that I think has also come across in the interviews that I've done is sort of and you've mentioned it as well in terms of just the large growth of the church, both the church itself as well as the school. I think I remember interviewing, is it Jim Bartoli? And he was, also one of the early members of the
Yes,
school.
I knew Jim well. He was in Scouts with me.
Okay. But yeah, he was saying, that there weren't many kids, and now you go there and it's a pretty large school, it seems like. So
Yes, I think they have accepted many other students too. I don't think it's all St. Pat's people that are going there, but
so that seems like a pretty big change to me. It's just the growth of
yes,
the Catholic population in this particular parish.
it has been. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my class only had 8 or 9
Yeah.
kids that graduated from 8th grade.
So I'm sure you probably knew them all pretty well then.
Yes, I did.
But wow. So that story you told earlier about when the sister lined 25 of you up, that was multiple classes. So you really couldn't figure out who did it.
I guess it was. I don't know. She was. I don't even know what she was looking for.
Yeah. So, were you in individual grades? Did you have one teacher per grade, or were there multiple, sort of like the one schoolhouse philosophy where all the grades were?
No, I think
together?
think on Pomfret Street we had 2 grades per classroom. There were 3 classrooms in that, and then a kindergarten down in the basement, and a cafeteria was down in the basement. But I think it was 5th and 6th, 3rd and 4th, 1st and 2nd. They were all grouped together. It was.
Yeah. So these are what I like to think of as the metaphysical questions, and that's always how I phrase them. But do you recall a time in your life when faith played a particularly important role?
Yes, I think at deaths of my parents and death of my first wife,
Yeah.
they certainly played a part.
No, that's a. yeah, I haven't I've never experienced either of those, so I'm fortunate in that sense. But yeah,
Very significant.
I can imagine how faith play an important role at those times.
And then there were 8 of us, and my youngest brother died after a couple months, but the rest of the family made it to adulthood, and there's only 3 of us left now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the oldest.
So this is a related question, but it might have a slightly different answer. How has your sort of faith journey influenced your life over the years, or how has maybe your faith changed over the years?
Uh, I'm sure it's changed, but I don't see it as having changed. My in the Air Force, I ran into atheists and everything else. But in fact, my close roommate was an atheist, and he died 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we went out to see his widow, and it was we never even discussed religion, but
Yeah.
So he hadn't converted.
no. my we went to school with Air Force Reserve and some people like that, and the Chicago or Illinois, Indiana Air National Guard were some of the classmates, and one of the guys was my roommate, and his name was Rich Dvorak, and I found out he was Catholic, so Sunday morning I went to wake him up, and I said, "Hey, Rich, it's time for church." So ever after that, when he had a card game in the room, he'd wake me up and say, "Hey, Griff, it's time for church." And, that was, they were,
The only question I have remaining is there anything that you want to mention or I should have asked but didn't?
uh,
Oh, yeah.
Monsignor Schmidt was authorized to give most of the sacraments, and he gave my baby brother confirmation, even though he was he was going to die in a month or so.
Wow.
It was weird.
It's a baptism and a confirmation very close together.
Yes, I'll say. I got confirmed before I received First Communion.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember why that occurred,
Yeah.
but these are my sisters and my brothers. Most of them are gone by now, but 2 brothers are gone, and so and did you ever see this one? I guess this is from the Sentinel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you've seen that. else I've got here?
Yeah, I heard in the 1960s there was a particular, I don't know if he was a father or, but he really liked putting together those histories of the church, which is great for looking back on.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
And I wasn't here in the 60s. I was in the Air Force.
yeah. So you can learn what you missed.
That was-
The one question I should have asked earlier too, just for clarification, was you mentioned your first wife, and I got her name, but I didn't get the name of your second wife.
Oh, Christine. She was a Higgins from Erie,
Okay.
and I forget how she got to Carlisle, but we met at a singles group. Yeah, Chris is, she's Catholic. She's been raised Catholic, and well, some 90-year-old woman invited me to a singles group, and nothing happened the first meeting, but the second meeting I went to, I met Chris.
There you go.
So,
So even though she was raised Catholic, her family didn't get together every night around the
oh,
bed. for the rosary.
no, but she's involved in the church more than I am.
Nowadays.
She volunteers for everything,
Yeah.
cooking and cooking and cleaning and
Are the two of you daily masters as well? I see you on Sunday and I
not
don't
so
see
much
you.
anymore, but there was a time when I was working, my office was over on South Hanover Street, and I'd go to 6:45 Mass every day and walk back and forth from the office to the church. That was kind of neat.
And well, I also should have done asked this earlier too, but what did you do for a living after you left the Air Force?
I went to Penn State after I got out of the Air Force, and then I became an electrical engineer. At first I worked for, who did I work for? Well, I worked for a couple places, but then I started with the consulting firms, and I worked for Herm Hahnemann and Bill Snyder. And Bill Snyder was there on South Hanover Street, and when he retired, I bought him out, and so I had a consulting business there for, I don't know, I did 40 jobs a year for 40 years.
Wow.
It's quite a bit. My favorite jobs were sewer plants. My least favorite were churches,
Yeah.
because they had building committees that everybody had a different idea. It was tough to match all of their ideas.
But sewer plants were different.
Yeah, sewer plants had one guy running them, and
Yeah.
he knew what he wanted, and it was, I liked them.
Yeah. Makes sense. Well, again, so that's all I have. So unless you have anything else, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing some memories of the history of both St. Pat's in York and St. Pat's here in Carlisle.
Yeah, sorry I didn't have more off my head, but
Not at all, no. It was great.